Das LIGNA Journal.
The LIGNA Journal from the 10th of May 2013. Live from the LIGNA on the topic German saw industry, ways from overcapacity. Welcome to our journal. Yesterday evening, the topic that we're going to be talking about today was already talked about quite a lot at the international trade meeting of the Bundesverband Säge und Holzindustrie yesterday here at the Haus der Nationen. I'm happy to talk about this topic today. Welcome, Hannes Plackner. You are representative chief editor from the Holzkurier. Welcome. Thank you. I said yesterday there was already talking going on about the ways out of overcapacity. That implies there's a problem. What is the problem here for the woodworking industry? Well, the softwood industry has a problem. Basically, there are just too many sawmills for the amount of softwood we have here in our forests. That is the overcapacity. That has historic reasons. It started in the past, but now there's a second problem, low markets. We were very focused on export, the sawing industry, and we are still suffering from weak export, USA, Italy and North Africa. These two problems lead to the fact that we have a high demand for logs with the highest prices worldwide now, but at the same time timber prices that it's not possible to make a profit. Where is the highest concentration of processing capacities? In the German-speaking area, that would be Sauerland. There are lots of sawmills there, but also further processing of South Germany. Baden-Württemberg and Bavaria both have very large saw industries, also Tyrol in Austria, and in Tyrol there are lots of sawmill business, and also Upper Austria. And everywhere there are these problems with the high prices and not very good cutwood price, timber price. The topic is being discussed a lot. In your experience, from what you've seen at the LIGNA 2013, you've been here for a few days too now, is it a decisive topic? Well, yes, of course, we are thinking in the industry, what is the path that we're going to, where should we invest, what should we do? I can experience a great difference in atmosphere if you go through the different halls. In the sawing hall, where the large sawmill plants and systems are being sold, it's a bit more difficult. The industry is looking more for solutions. That seems to be my impression in processing. There's still a great big boom there. That's being more and more an offer there. So a very important topic. We'll be discussing it in a moment in a great round here. But before, we would like to look at the evening yesterday. I already said the Verband Deutsche Säge und Holzindustrie had invited to a reception. So of course we had many from the trade and industry and asked them what they thought about the problems in the industry. Well, in principle, you have to say the future options of the German industry will depend on the resource wood. We are forced, because of the high prices of the raw material, to get more out of the wood. We have to optimize the use. The amount is going to be what counts. We have to reduce of the cut. This chance is something that most of the sawmill industry has actually already implemented and used, getting raw effects, value that will cover the higher costs. That should be easier than I thought. Smaller and medium-sized saws are far more competent than the large-scale saws. I see the difficulty there, though, that they politically are being put into a different position. But if you can alter the situation a little bit, I think there will be a good chance there. The chances for the saw industry are, I think, that if we can manage in the next few years to lower the high production costs, which have grown greatly in the last few years, if we can pass that on to the customers and give the wood the value it actually deserves. Using the hardwood, well, with softwood you have to think about how can we find new markets and get back onto a good economic path that way. These were the first few thoughts on this topic at the LIGNA 2013, and now I'm glad to welcome you here at Hall 16. I would like to introduce our round. Brigitte Decker-Wilbert, Managing Director of Eugen Holzindustrie, one of the leading wood processing companies in Europe. Welcome. Then Lars Schmidt, to you welcome. He is the main director of Deutsche Säge Holzindustrie. So yesterday he was the one to invite us all. And a visitor from Finland, Jukka-Pekka Ranta. He was in the association in Finland. He's an expert for small and medium-sized sawmills in Finland. We are curious to see what the opinion is from abroad. And Lutz Schmelter, he is managing director of Josef Schmelter GmbH, a family company since 1955, softwood sawmill in Lennestadt Saalhausen, but also in Lennestadt Uningen. Nice to have you here. I'm looking forward to an interesting round. There is an overcapacity. We already talked about that at the beginning. Have you got some numbers for us? What are they like? How are they to be seen? It's a very interesting question. It's very difficult to put it into quantities. In Austria, there are numbers from the trade association. They say it's a 30% overcapacity. But I would like to ask Lars Schmidt if he has current numbers from Germany. Well, thank you for throwing that heavy ball towards me. I think it's very difficult to quantify that value. On the one hand, of course, there's the processing capacity, the economic use of the capacity, but also the availability of the raw material. In Germany, there has been a trend that these two values are counteractive, so the capacities have grown and also been supported by the state, so actually the overcapacity has been supported. But then the raw materials that are available, especially with softwood, has sunk drastically. Change of the wood from the hardwood to softwood has grown, and the use, a lot of the softwood is used here. Areas that have been no longer cultivated. I think there are 4 national parks in Germany, all factors that lead to us having less softwood available. And the most recent topic is the small private wood, the forest ownership in Germany, privately owned forests, the reserves that are not being used. Because of the economic crisis, the trust crisis, we can see there's a lot of being held back. There are regions in Germany with very low amounts. So we have an overcapacity. No, I cannot quantify it because there are two dynamic values that are working against each other here in Germany. Well, maybe we can come from a total economic view to an individual company view. Ms. Decker-Wilbert, you said you're thinking about shutting down your sawmill. You started doing further processing 15 years ago. Why would you start thinking about shutting down the sawmill after such a long tradition? Well, in the meantime, there are many companies that are in our situation. They're not getting enough in the way of logs. The storm situation has also played its part there. At the moment, we are waiting to see how the forestry will develop and what they imagine the situation to be like. It could become obvious that the sawmill must be shut down if there's not enough in the way of logs available. From Rheinland-Pfalz and Sauerland, you are also leader of a business, a family business. Mr. Schmelter, how do you see the situation in Sauerland? Well, I can confirm what we said at the beginning. log purchasing in Sauerland is a challenge, and because of the storm Kirill in 2007, we lost a lot of the wood in one night. We already had a bit lower capacity in our area anyway, and then because of Kirill shortly before and shortly afterwards, of course, there were higher investment in Sawmills. This was more of a dilemma then again. Very few logs available, and that is the result of the development there. So it's currently a very big problem. Would you cut more in the sawmill if you had more in the way of logs? Well, it's difficult because, of course, in the last year, probably not, because the timber market is a bit problematic at the moment too, and in the last year there wasn't enough in the way of logs, but also there wasn't enough in the way of timber orders, so the trends were both negative, really, for us. So it's not the case for the current year. I think I can say that we will probably be able to have more orders, but not have enough log to process. So we've already heard a little bit about the Middle European industry. Now we export to the United States, to North Africa, Japan. We also meet Scandinavians there, so we have to. We would like to ask, what is the situation like in Scandinavia? What about the Scandinavian sawmills? What are they like? Well, the situation in Finland has always been different. In Finland and Sweden, we have, from the end of the 19th century, 60-70% of our production was exported. This industry is very important in the way of export from my countries, or the countries I'm from. Overcapacity is not quite clear for us. But I would say we have very strong and large markets, and both Sweden and Finland, and we're also world champions in the use 1 cubic meter per head a year. It shows that we have this home. We've got quite a good supply here. But I also have to say that in the last 8 years in Finland, for example, we have from 13, 14 million right down to 9 million. We've reduced our timber capacity. That happened in the last 8 years, and it's not because of overcapacity, but profitability problems that we had, and I think that we want to stay here. But this overcapacity term is not quite the same with us than it is in your part of Europe. What will the capacities in Sweden and Finland be like in the next few years? Is there going to be more or less? Sweden has still something to do. We clearly have overcapacity in the southern part of the country, and that was because of the big Hurricane Gudrun in 2005. They're still working on that. In the last 2 years, the Swedish sawmills, by 1.5 million in production, they have reduced, and I think we can still see that the limit will be about 15 million. But with us, I would say 9 million, 8-9 million would be about the future level, and that comes from the fact that we have a very large and strong paper industry, and they definitely want the chips. And if the medium-sized companies, family companies, don't produce the amounts that the chipping sector needs, then the large companies themselves will cut everything, regardless of the costs. So minimum 9 cubic meter timber we can expect from Finland, 8-9 million. I would like to talk to Ms. Decker-Wilbert. If you're thinking of shutting down the sawmill, where would you buy in? Would you do that in Germany, or would you also import from Scandinavia? Well, we already today get our timber from Scandinavia. In the meantime, 40%. Even in Germany, we import there. And I see the trend definitely in that direction. In the future, I'm sure we'll be getting wood from Russia or the other eastern states, because I believe that the saw industry there will focus on that. Maybe also Austrian and German companies might be looking there, because there are other frame conditions there. The saw industry needs someone that they can rely on. Do you, as a buyer of timber, do you need large companies, or could you go to smaller companies, sawmills, for that? That's a difficult question. We see ourselves as one of the larger companies, comfortable with the larger companies. We have good partnerships there that we've built up, regardless whether in Scandinavia, Germany or other countries. I think it depends on the flexibility, and we'll just have to wait and see. Thank you. What I'm actually trying to find out is, what do you think the sawmill industry will look like in 5 or 10 years? Will there be a small sort of family-led structure sign, or will the large companies be more comfortable in the industrial plants? Do you have an opinion? Yes, I do have an opinion. I think it will not go either in one or the other direction. I think in 5 to 10 years, the smaller companies are more flexible, but I don't think it will be a monopolization of the larger companies either. I think the trend has been recognized, that there's not much more that we can actually survive, any more cutbacks. So I think it will make sense to have a balance of the different types of companies and sizes. In the past, there was the impression that politicians seemed to prefer large companies. There were contracts in Bavaria and North Rhine-Westphalia. You, as a Sauerland company, have been confronted with the fact that North Rhine-Westphalia, in theory, has 1.7 cubic meters. It was supposed to deliver that to the company Klausner. That's not quite sure whether that's going to happen or not. The political situation is in negotiations with the company Klausner. We talked to Johannes Remmel from North Rhine-Westphalia last week. Yes, we're at 6 months. We'll be talking in this time. That's what the court told us to do. We are willing to negotiate, but we will, and that is a positive news. And we will still be able to supply wood to our customers. And in this time, we will try to find solutions, bring them to the table. But it is also clear that the complete contract is restricted. We already made that clear to Klausner because of the the abatement rules and regulations, and we will be looking into that. We still want to supply the regional companies. We want to support the medium-sized companies as in the past and supply them with material. That's a good message for the jobs and the sawmill industries in the area and for North Rhine-Westphalia in total. Yes, Mr. Schmelter, so the next 6 months you're going to be getting wood from Landesbetrieb North Rhine-Westphalia. How is it going to go on after that? We're just going to have to wait and see what the minister and his partners can reach, what negotiations they can reach, and what the results will be here at the table. I cannot make any forecast, but it could be a financial solution, and this would lead to the fact that there would be no further wood from the state or the private areas would be delivered to Klausner. A financial solution, you mean the delivery would then be compensated in money, up to 120 million euros. No one knows whether the state will actually put the money together. If the country decides to deliver the wood, if the county decides to deliver the wood, that'll be okay. Well, there's quite a lot of wood there, and as you said beforehand, there's a setback in the delivery amounts, and if you look at that's actually wood that's to be delivered that is supposed to be kept for sustainability reasons, then it's not possible. I don't know how that's going to be solved.
Dann gibt es dafür keine Lösung. Das ist nicht machbar. Da weiß ich nicht, wie man das lösen soll.
You have to say North Rhine-Westphalia is really a very topical area. Kyrill really affected North Rhine-Westphalia very, very strongly. It has an enormous amount of privately owned woods, so there's a restriction here. There are different factors working together here that if there's a wood supply necessary at a very large range, it will be catastrophic for the region. So it's already a very tense situation. Yes, that is the problem now. This insecurity here with this Damocles sword hanging, the Klausner contract hanging over North Rhine-Westphalia, with the situation now and the small agreement that's been found at court now, the private forest still is holding back. We have to see and try to convince them to come forward, at least briefly, and to give wood, to provide wood for the industry as soon as possible. So we have to advertise that the current situation is not going to lead to keeping back, but so that we can bridge the gap that is in the current situation. And it's important for the Minister not just to wait the 6 months, but to try to find a solution as quickly as possible to get the topic off the slate as soon as possible. We will definitely be following the developments very, very closely. The contract needn't have been made. It was a political decision in 2007, and now the mistakes that were made in 2007 are having to be borne. I'm daring to say that. But isn't it so that the decisions that are made now might also then create problems for future generations? I'm looking at Ms. Decker-Wilbert again, reshaping of the forest. Do you, in the future, even if you yourself are not going to be running a sawmill anymore, there's a chance to get German softwood that you can make glulam, etc. out of? Well, basically, we do want to keep our sawmill. We just don't have the raw material for that, and the forestry is reshaping the forests to planting beeches rather than softwood. And it's something that the public hasn't seemed to realise, that there's not going to be enough of the firwood around. We should think about the carpenters and the joiners and ask them what kind of material they would like to have, which kind of would they prefer. Where are we going with the beech trees?
Wo wollen wir denn eigentlich hin mit der Buche?
What would your demand or your prerequisite for the forestry sector be? Well, they should sit together with the users and find solutions, also just to find out what they actually would like. So do you think should be more firwood planted in Germany? Yes, definitely. And you should at least look into the areas that are suitable and not just generalize. Yes, definitely. You can only answer this question with yes. It's not just to do with the saw industry. It has to do with further processing and the crafts, the trade. This changing of the wood is not the same in other countries. Other countries are using firwood, are planting firwood, and firwood is still very popular for a craft. And if we cannot provide this wood, then the processed wood, the laminated wood and so on, is going to be imported so that the workers can use it. Well, I'm asking because you talked about surrounding countries. Is there changing of the forest in Scandinavia? This topic we've not really talked about, because we have our natural growth is from firwood, and we do not have this discussion. We have large growth, 100 million cubic meter growth every year of fir trees. And only 50 to 55 cubic meters per year. So our situation is quite different. What could also be said that beech in the last years has lost in value. Beech is now available, is 50% below the price that we had 10 years ago. But with firwood it has changed in the opposite direction. You pay 50% more than 10, 15 years ago. Do you see a potential for hardwood, especially beech, in constructive wood construction? I'm talking about a time, maybe the next 5 years. No. We have to look to see how the projects work. There are concrete proceedings to use the wood in constructive wood building. We'll have the results in the next few years, but in a large range, as the fir trees are being used, I don't think that's possible. It's a question of the market. If science researches in the area, we still think we have a higher cost for hardwood. Is the consumer willing to pay more money for wooden products? Are the products going to be imported from abroad that are made of softwood? Yes, hardwood is constructively usable, but not in the mass market. We now have an individual case here with Poma. It's one company that has a good product on the market, but what are the others doing? I see we seem to be of one opinion that the softwood sawing industry is steering towards a problem. Mr. Schmidt, you are representing the trade in Berlin. Does the political situation seem to understand? Well, it doesn't make sense to say that someone specific has the blame, the forestry division, for example. These problems have been developing for many, many years now. In my opinion, it was just not well negotiated between forestry and other areas of political divisions and so on. I think there have been a lot of numbers that have been brought onto the plate, and the numbers are being interpreted in many ways. We still have a lot of growth, but I have the impression that is because we've also been discussing this topic very intensively, that there's a rethinking going on in forestry. The rails were set towards hardwood a long time ago, direction is away from softwood, and you can't just change back into another direction. It's a procedure that takes years. Fortunately, private forestry has not done that. There's still a very large proportion of softwood there, and we need to make that available. I think there's an overcapacity, yes, but on the amount side we have to do something, but we also have on the raw materials side topics and points that we can develop further in Germany. So what kind of solutions are available? We already talked about solutions. What options are there? Well, one of the top things is investment in further processing. Further processing as a sawmill not only cut wood and produce boards, but also maybe dry them, plane them, glue them, and use them as, or create them to be used as constructive wood. There are in the two standard assortments, the sort of two ranges, solid wood and glulam timber. There's a constant small growth in one-digit area, and glulam timber has risen by 25%. So we better talk to Ms. Decker-Wilbert here, because she does all of these different ranges. How is it working with further processing? Well, at the moment we have the following situation. In South Europe we have a crisis. And that means Italy is not really there, Spain, Portugal, France. All of these countries are in a big slump in woodworking, in wood construction. The industries that are processing normally are concentrating, are focusing on small and few markets. And what you can read in the press with extensions large projects that are being implemented. These are replacement investments. The industry in the last 20 years has developed, but it's clear that you have to make new investments, but it's not that the amount is available and that there's potential. We are all fighting for very few markets for the little that's left. Of course, we hope that Italy will come back, that Spain and Portugal will come out of the slump, but when? How much can the home market in Germany solve this problem? We're not just the largest timber producer, but also the biggest wood consumer in Europe. What do you say, Mr. Schmidt? Well, the question is, it is in a direction that makes sense, in my opinion. That's one of the solutions that we will follow with the group. But another thing is that we need to raise the sales of wood, urban building. All of these things are positive developments that are around, and in the building division it does seem to make sense. And our goal is to get the consumer onto our side, to create his awareness for wood, and it's a solution for the companies as well. Wood at a better price, a higher value, and secondly, I think we need the base for the consumer, or that from the consumers. We need to have a lot of lobby work going on for long term to make sure that the woods are cultivated in a long-term manner, so that the industry is no longer in a negative attitude that we don't want this, we don't want that. I think we need to change that position. We need to make it very clear what sensible procedures can be done with wood. And I think that's something we can do here in Germany, in the market here. That is something that we can manage. It's something we have to tackle. We have to try to promote wood industry in Germany. Well, that's a medium-term development that we're expecting, or that we're trying to induce. The improvement of the wood building numbers in Germany, building flats and houses and so on. I think in the short term, the German market cannot balance that out. The relevant industries in our neighbouring countries, Austria, Switzerland and so on, who also produce these products and have been delivering them to these markets, they are currently looking for markets that are running. The German market is actually working quite well in comparison to other markets. It's actually quite good. It's one of the few building markets that did not slump, but still has growth. But the amounts that are not being used in the markets in other countries are coming to Germany, meaning higher competition here than before. So the economic situation for processing is also problematic. May I, as a foreigner, someone from the outside, say something? When I was here in 2000, I remember that at the time the Minister for Residential Matters, there was not enough living space here. 6 million living units, and 12 years later, I don't think he could have filled up that space now. And if I look at the consumption per head, if you look at Germany, you have about 0.2, and as I said beforehand, we have in Scandinavia about 1. So you have a great potential here. And then I have to say, or I have to ask, are you happy with this promotion work that you've been doing? Do you think a political solution might be possible? Well, the numbers on the per head consumption or use of wood, well, we're at 1.3 now, actually, per inhabitant, but more than 50% are being used energetically. When they were wanting to raise the consumption of wood, and so the federal government reported last year that we had actually reached the goal, but the material consumption is actually lower, but the energetic consumption is higher. That's a problem that we have here. I think we had a good measure here in Germany. The distribution pool, it was something that was complained about, but it did have the option to work in this direction, or the possibility to work in this direction. We had, in my opinion, a good instrument in Germany. company, the wood distribution pool. You had the appropriate mediums to work in this area, but the Bundesverfassungsgericht took away this chance, and we've not managed to find or build up anything else in replacement for using wood. But we're at a different point now. We don't need to sell so much. That's something we need to promote the uses of wood. That's something that has to be rethought. We need focused ideas for that. What kind of direction are you thinking of? In the Holzkurier, we have a lot of wood that is being used. Is it supposed to go in that direction for the different kinds of woods that are being used? Well, of course it can go in that direction, but there again is a problem if there's going to be overcapacity, which would destroy these products. So the different kinds of uses have to change. A question again to you, Ms. Decker-Wilbert. Is there an overcapacity for further processing? I think the question was already answered. Because of the export markets not working too well, everything is just in the other countries. In Germany, you see names 5 years ago, you'd never heard of them in the German market. And so I don't see the solution there. I think wooden construction should be promoted, supported. I think the politicians should join in more. In North Rhine-Westphalia, there's a project that has just finished, but that did do a lot of good, where the state had to take its part. But the politicians do need to listen to us. I have another question from Ms. Ranta. And what about further processing? What about the capacity in Scandinavia? Is that being built up further? I'm asking especially about glulam timber. Well, we do not have that kind of value. It's cheaper to build these products in Central Europe. I don't know any projects like that for these products in Scandinavia. There's a question also for a sawmill, whether further processing is an option or vertical integration makes more sense. That's also an option. If I were still active, Ms. Decker-Wilbert, I would call her immediately and say, could we cooperate? That would maybe be an option. But, as I said, whether one should further process or not, well, you'd need to start a new business idea. You'd have to do more in the way of marketing activities and invest a lot there. So traditional sawmills are not as used to that. But as I said, the value process chain, and that's our biggest problem, I would say. The value of the processing chain, yes.
Und Wertschöpfungstiefe, nehme ich an. Der Herr Schmelter macht das ja anders.
Mr. Schmelter does it a different way. He cuts glues and sells it. Is that a way out of overcapacity, Mr. Schmelter? Or do you see in further processing another way out of overcapacity? What ways do you see? Well, we've all just been presuming what the suitable paths would be. We ourselves probably will not be capable of solving this, and I certainly not. We have to hope that the players around us, banks, will make good decisions here. And I also agree with Mr. Schmidt. We have competitive ideas in small, medium-sized companies and also those in the large industries. And what is decisive is that the non-competitive ideas in both areas will be thinned out by the market mechanisms. That's actually talking about shutting down companies. Can the group somehow control this? To help accompany people out of the business. Well, I think waiting for competition to solve the problem, that would be the worst solution for the sector. because there's going to be a lot having to happen before everything will clear up. But as a group, we can try to direct it slightly. We are very active on the raw material side, but now it is understandable that in the near future we're not going to have new and usable softwood in Germany. So we are going to be focusing very much on the market side, building, construction, consumption of wood. And I could imagine that we'll be more motivated in the direction, maybe consult also in cooperation with the politicians that have an interest and must have an interest in that. This is to create an offer for the sawmill industry. How can I develop my industry further? How can I shut down my industry? To give impulses to these companies to set the tracks in the right direction. The German saw industry ways out of overcapacity. Well, it's definitely, we've talked about lots of different problems. We've shown up a few solution ideas, but it's not something we can solve from today to tomorrow. What could the summary be? What could the possible steps could be? I think for the LIGNA 2015, there can be a lot of change in the export markets. Might be a slight change in wood consumption in Germany. If there is a change, a rise in the wood consumption in Germany, in Austria, then there's a possible to find a way out of the overcapacity if there's a willingness to invest. But the market really needs to look good before we start doing that. For the overcapacity in the sawmill industry, I expect more companies will have to shut down, and I hope that'll be socially acceptable and processable. Well, I would like to thank everyone in this round. Thank you for the very deep insight and the opinions here. I hope you have a good trade fair day here at the LIGNA. I always think in LIGNA gaps in different programs. Thank you very much for your attention, for our topic today that we were discussing, and also hope that you have a very successful trade fair day here at the LIGNA 2013.